with the pro and the hack.
Well, hello, everybody throughout the internet universe. We are everywhere. It's the pro, that's Dave Mulso, and the hack, that's the coach, Rich Gilgallen. Don't make any mistake about that. And we're very excited today. First of all, last week we had Dave Stockton on.
What do you bring?
He was fabulous.
Yeah, a lot of insight there.
And today we have another Hall of Famer. Well, actually, a Hall of Famer. Stockton, amazingly, is not in the World Golf Hall of Fame. It should be addressed. But today we have our own Hall of Famer, the one and only Larry Bohannon is going to join us.
Yes, sir.
A writer for the Desert Sun since 1986. And he's was inducted into the Local Media Hall of Fame, rightfully so. He also, at the golf firm at LPGA West, the Amex, the press room was named after him.
Oh, wow.
What an honor that is. And he's a dear brother and one of my dearest friends in the media business in this town. Fabulous writer, author of two amazing books, The History of Bob Holbrook, and I'll have to ask him about the other one, The History of Desert Golf. So coming up in just a minute with Dave Mulso, the teaching pro at the one and only Mission Hills, sitting in front of the amazing picture of Dinah Shore. And the coach, it's the pro and the hack with guest Larry Bohannon coming right up. And hello, everybody. It's the pro and the hack from Mission Hills Country Club, this jewel in the Coachella Valley in Southern California's desert, alongside the one and only Dave Mulso, one of the great teaching pros in the desert and really around the country. And we are honored today, David,
Yes.
to have the actual historian of desert golf with us, our dear friend from the Desert Sun for now some 40 years, the one and only Larry Bohannon. What's up, partner? Good to see you, man.
Historian just means you've been around a long time.
You don't have to tell me. This is a black beard when I met you 40 years ago.
Thanks for asking.
Well, people should be aware that the local desert chapter of the PGA annually awards a media person of the year, and you won that I don't know how many times, and I won it 10 times, 11 times, and Cal, rest his soul, used to win it. Cal Ehlers, or Cal Ehlers, every now and then. And let's just go take a walk back to the history of the golf professionals. Here, David is part of a long line, of and you notice that they don't look the same as they used to when we started. They weren't 6'4", no, and had flat bellies. I mean, these guys were some wild children in the even going back to the 60s, 70s, but certainly in the 90s.
The first teaching professional I remember meeting here at Mission Hills, so it's 86, 87, somewhere there, was Johnny Revolto.
Yep. Yeah. Legendary.
And, Johnny played the first Masters.
The first
Masters, 1934.
Yes.
And so by 1986 or so, you can figure how much older he was. But he would, and he didn't look like he was a pro. He looked like a guy who kind of wandered in through the gates. But he'd sit there and he'd look at you swing and go, "Wow, you're better than you say you are." And I said, "Well, you haven't seen me get my driver yet." And he'd go, "Okay." And then he'd go, ring the bell. That was his big thing. You could take the club back and he'd say that was ringing the bell, getting you to parallel. And that was the kind of guy that was a head pro back then.
And he taught a lot of pros.
And he was very, very, very popular. Yeah. And
I'd say it's amazing. A lot of that stuff needs to be brought back.
Yeah, he was a very fundamental guy.
I'm hardcore with the fundamental.
Yes.
It doesn't work. We don't have good fundamental.
Well, in Hoping's book, the grip is, I think, 45 pages.
Yeah.
The chapter 1, grip.
Yeah. And the only thing, as they say, the only thing with you and the glove is the grip.
Exactly right.
And let's say it was another great teaching girl that I knew through the years. And her name was Shirley Spork.
Oh, yeah. Special.
One of the founders of the LPGA. And she actually started teaching at Tamarisk in 1953. And she eventually started the LPGA teaching and cult program division. And is in, I don't know. I asked her one time in Hall of Fame she was in, and she said that she thought it was 6.
Really?
Because the PGA of America has their in their Hall of Fame. The LPGA certainly, she's in as a teaching pro. She's in as a founder. I think Eastern Michigan is where she went to school. She's in
that Hall of Fame.
In the 1940s, she won what was basically the NCAA championship for women's golf, but the NCAA didn't recognize a women's championship in the 40s.
Yeah.
And so she won it, and she went back to Eastern Michigan, and they wouldn't acknowledge it. As she held that against them for years, even though she kept giving them money as one of their bigger boosters.
Wow.
But
So you started with the Desert Sun in 1986. What were you doing before that?
I had been in Yucca Valley for 4 years at the High Desert Star.
Okay.
That was my first real job out of college from Cal State Fullerton. And I was kind of happy up there.
Yeah.
And I got a call from the Desert Sun one day saying that they had an opening and would I be interested in applying for it. And I said, sure. For a 3-time week paper in Yucca Valley. This was 6 times a week.
6 times a week.
We didn't have a Sunday paper then. And so I sent them all my stuff, and I didn't hear from them. I said, well, it's the end of that. And about 2 months later, they said, why didn't you send us your stuff?
They never got it.
I said, well, I did. They said, well, why don't you get it all together and come down on Wednesday? So I came down on Wednesday, interviewed with a couple of people, showed them my stuff. Did the dumbest interview I've ever done in my life. The sports editor was sitting across the room, and I was supposed to call him like he was a coach, and I was going to get details. Waving at the guy across, wrote it up. They said, great, thanks, we'll let you know. I had to drive back up to Yucca Valley because I was still working that day. And by the time I got to Yucca Valley, they had called and offered me the job. And so I started September 9th, 1986.
And how often did you commute until you moved down?
It was about 2 months.
Yeah. It's a long ride.
I wanted to stay in Yucca Valley.
Yeah.
But my first real job here was covering COD football.
Really?
On Saturday nights. And I'd have to go in and write the story up after the game Saturday night, get in my car, drive up those 2 hills to Yucca Valley.
Yeah.
Bongo grade, the Yucca grade. And you're out there against all these Marines who are trying to get back to 29 points before their pass runs out. And I said, this isn't safe. So I moved down to Palm Springs.
Yeah.
And now I've lived in Indio for 20 years.
So in 97, this guy from out of town moves to town here and starts talking about sports.
87.
97. Oh, that's when I had it. And what was your thoughts of when the first time you were coach?
We didn't have any sports talk.
Syndicated. Yeah.
Yeah, the syndicated stuff, but we didn't have anything local. And it's like, it was this guy with this voice. And, then you find out a little bit about, Washington, and you've been on the team.
Yeah.
What you think? The
92 to 97.
And it's like, okay,
They give him a
there's
shot.
a legitimacy to it that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first of about 113 jobs you've had.
That's right. Bouncing around, man. Bouncing around.
But you also had obviously a great love of the game.
This game.
So that was important as well. Because, if you're in the Coachella Valley, we've all benefited from the love of the game here in this valley. It's not the biggest market in the world, but it's probably more dedicated of a market towards golf than any other market out here.
So do you still see an increase in golf since COVID? Got a huge boom because
The surge has slowed and is flattened without question, but it's continuing. I think what we found just talking to directors of golf and GMs and everything like that, is that they were all afraid that all these people started playing golf when COVID hit, just as something to do, get out of the house, because you could do golf, but you couldn't do other things. That eventually those people would go away. Eventually they'd all go back to work, and they would drift away from the game. And they haven't. Some of them have, obviously, but they've held on to enough golfers. And I think it's also the idea that, I'm talking to one GM around here, he said that people's work schedules have become more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
So now instead of 9 to 5, you might do 7 to noon and go play golf in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And so there's a round that you wouldn't have had before. So it's still out there.
How about the first time that you drove through these gates? Do you have any recollection of the first time?
It was actually before I got the job here. I was working for the High Desert Star again, and I came down on media day
For the Dinah?
for the Dinah Shore. And the tournament director at the time was Dave Marr.
How about that?
And we had a great day. I had a little talk with him. He was very happy with somebody from Yucca Valley to come down.
Yeah.
I did not meet his assistant at the time. It was Mike Gillespie.
Yeah.
Who became the tournament director for a long time.
It's great to be with you today. We are live here from the Dinah Shore room. Dave Mosso, noted teaching pro, golf historian, and local icon Larry Bohannon, and
Again,
Coach
just
Rich
old.
Gilgal. So, Larry, we were just talking about you started at Desert Sun in '86 after coming down the hill from Yucca Valley.
Yeah.
And at some point, you had to drive through the gates of Mission Hills, and what were your first sort of memories of that experience?
I actually did that before I started with the Desert Sun. I was still in Yucca Valley. I got invited out to the media day for the Nabisco Dinah Shore, or I think it was Nabisco by then. Yeah, it was.
Well, it was in Nabisco day because the press left with shopping bags of cookies.
There were more Oreos,
butters,
Fig
and Oreos,
Newtons, and-
Fig Newtons. Oh my goodness, great!
But and I showed up. Dinah was there, and the tournament director was Dave Marr, who had been on a PGA tour and was a ABC golf analyst for a long time, and
highly respected.
yeah, and it was great to be here at this golf course. It was called at that time the Old Course. It was called the Old Course.
AULD.
The Palmer course here was called the New Course, and there was no Pete Dye course. And when they eventually built the Pete Dye course, it was called the Dinah Shore course. It was confusing.
Is that right? So the Pete Dye was known as the Dinah Shore course.
Yes, and when Club Corp bought the place, their chairman was a guy named Robert Dedman, and they had a little deal here, and they said that he was confused. They said, "Why don't they play the Dinah Shore on the Dinah Shore court?"
That's a good question.
So I explained it to him.
Yeah.
I said that, the Dinah Shore course, I mean, the tournament course was the original course. Then it became the old course, then the new course. And then when they built the Pete Dye course, when Landmark owned the place, with Pete Dye coming in, they named it after Dinah to honor her.
Yeah.
And he just shook his head. And it's like, they're not going to keep that up very long. And sure enough, that's what they did.
This
They
is what I mean,
changed it.
Dave. This is the history of the Coachella Valley in a nutshell.
But yeah, it became the Dinah Shore course, the Palmer course.
Now, did you ever get to meet Muirhead while he was at it?
I interviewed him a couple of times before he lost his ever-loving mind.
Yes.
Because he was out of his mind at the end. But he loved this golf course. He had a great affection for it. Over the years, it was softened quite a bit from what he had originally designed. If you talk to some of the LPGA pros who played here in the 70s, they will tell you that he must have buried some elephants under some of the greens because they were so severe.
Yeah.
And, but you know, he was one of those architects who was not really a X's and O's kind of guy. He was an artist, and he believed in artistry, and the hole should look great and play great. And he was also kind of a land planner. And if you know, one of the hallmarks of the Dinah Shore course is everything has very wide corridors, 2 holes. So if you play in the first hole, you're playing parallel to the 9th.
Right.
If you're playing the 10th hole, you're playing parallel to 18. And he said that is something he wanted to do. Keep the homes from looking like a lot of the homes on a lot of the golf courses that were built here in the 50s and 60s, where you have very straight, narrow holes with homes and holes to the left, homes to the right, palm trees to the left, palm trees to the right, hi-fi music coming out of both ways.
Right.
He didn't want that. He wanted very wide corridors. So, you know, I think the genius of the Dinah Shore course remains that it challenges players of a variety of talents. A 15 handicapper can go out there. A 5 handicapper can go out there. The best women players in the world can go out there and still be challenged. But, you know, obviously you're adjusting the tees and the like, but or the rough or the speed of the greens. Right. But the golf course itself, the bones of the golf course, can be accessed by pretty much any skill level.
It's at the par 4 complex on the back 9 of the Dinah Shore course. We're talking about 12 minutes, 13, 15, and 16. Yeah, 4 of the most incredible par 4s in this whole valley.
The back 9 here is very, very strong because it also has a pair of really interesting par 3s at 14, 17.
Well, Lanny Watkins said, now, Jimmy, you can put this ball right down the fairway on this green. You can put this ball, if you're behind the pin downhill, you can wind up down the fairway.
Yeah.
I loved when these national guys came out here to get, you know,
yeah.
picture.
If they, you know, when the seniors showed up here 3 years ago, when they're gone, unfortunately, but that was really the question was, you know, the Dinah Shore course years and years and years ago was a top 100 course on the Golf Digest list, which is the one that matters. And through the years, it drifted away because new people build new golf courses. Steve Wynn builds a course in Vegas that automatically is on top 100. And so the Dinah Shore course kind of got a bad knock as well as the women's course because the women play there. Right. Yeah. Really good women play there. So when the seniors showed up, it was like, you know, how are they going to accept this golf course? Most of them hadn't played this golf course. They had played some of the Bob Hope courses through the years, through their career.
Some of the juniors younger.
But some of the guys like John Cook and Fred Couples and guys like that had not only played the Dinah Shore course, grew up here basically. John Cook, you know, when he was being mentored by Ken Vittori, who was kind of the head director of golf here. And the seniors took to it immediately. They loved it. In part because you had to play each hole differently. You didn't always hit driver. You didn't always have a mid iron in. Sometimes it was a short iron. The par 5s maybe were reachable for them, but maybe weren't. And the greens certainly are a challenge for anybody.
Ryder Bernard Langer comes up with a stat. How in the world you play 6?
Well, that's the greatest question. I mean,
if you can tell me, let me know. Well, I've been trying to play it.
Depends on what tee you play from. You know, if you can hit a 3-wood onto the island, you have a short approach to the green. If you just make believe that the W palm trees aren't there,
yeah, that's right.
You have to just tell yourself there are no trees right there.
Now, here's the deal with Langer, of course. In 1976, not a lot of people know this. But in 1976, the World Cup was played on this golf course.
Yes.
And
Was it Palmer at 76?
1976.
I think it was Dave Stockton that was a partner.
Dave Stockton had won the PGA Championship,
in 76.
and the U.S. Open winner was Jerry Pate. And so they were the U.S. team. And the only guy who played in the Gallery Classic the first year, and who had played in the 1976 World Cup year, was Bernhard Langer of Germany.
I did not know that.
And I asked him, after his first press conference, I got him over in the corner a little bit. I said, "You remember playing here?" He said, "That was the very first time in the United States."
Wow.
And he did very, very much remember playing here. He said he admits he didn't remember the holes.
Well, I mean, was the initial design and the tee box is still there, as well as the monument. I'm pretty sure it's 626. So that had to be one of the first over 600-yard par fives in the country.
There was a group of guys here when I got here. They were called the Gold Tee Gang. And they went out once a week and they played the gold tees, which are the back tees.
Yeah.
And, these guys were nuts. They were all like 2s or 3 handicappers. But they would play every week from the gold tees. And on 18, it was always like 615, 620, something like that. And, for most of us, we sit there and we try and figure out, do we need to get it past that palm tree next to the water?
Yes.
Do we go to the bunkers? And they were laying up to the water from the back tees. So it's,
it's really a jewel.
It's a tremendous history here for a variety of reasons.
Terry Wilcox, I just wanted to mention because he's the guy who had the incredible intelligence to put me on the first tee.
Terry was worked for Land, and had that twang. I'm Terry Wilcox.
Had that Oklahoma,
and he became the tournament director in 1994 for the Nabisco Dinah Shore, and that was played in March. In February of that year, Dinah died. And when you stop and think that it's been 32 years since Dinah died, that's an unbelievable thing for me. But so his very first tournament was the first one played without Dinah.
Wow.
Not great. But he had been a club pro forever. He'd been a pretty good player. Played with Bob Hope.
Big landmark guy. Yeah, he's on the money list. Still to this day, way down there.
But he approached the LPGA and he approached this tournament like a club pro. In other words, he made sure he knew everybody's name. He shook everybody's hand. He was not an administrator. He was your friend. And he did a great job of making the players feel like they were included in everything.
Really amped up the press area as well.
And, so when they finally, he was the one, it was Dottie Pepper.
Yeah.
Dove into the lake. And like 3 weeks later, she was sick as a dog. And she said they pulled something green out of her ear because the lake at that time was just a lake.
Right. It was a mud lake.
Yeah. And Terry was the one who kind of behind the idea.
Let's make it a swim.
Building a separate lake, putting some filtered water in there. And that's why they named it Poppy's Pond, because Sherry Wilcox's grandkids call him Poppy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it became Poppy's Pond. And so, that was kind of their lasting tribute.
I had a little match with him on the Dinah, and we're coming down to 18. Of course, I was receiving many strokes. And I hit my third shot in the water, and I hit my sand wedge in the hole for a 5. Net 4. And only Oklahoma guy, only Terry, he was looking at it. I could see him count. Coach, did you just make 5 and 4? I said, I did 10.
I just talked to him just a couple weeks ago.
Oh, that's great.
He still lives up in DHS, still gets out and is still very much involved with the desert golf scene and loves what happens at Mission Hills, and is still very upset that they don't have the women's tournament.
Oh,
Well, they
that's
talked about it. That I had heard that the new president of the LPGA was now for the Ep.6.
Yes, they.
And now kind of here's scuttlebutt a little bit about possibly bringing back the old.
Yeah, the city of Indian Wells has spent a lot of money, $13 million, I think, to redesign one of its 2 courses at the Indian Wells Golf Resort, the Players Course over there. They have the Players and the Celebrity Course. And they redesigned it. It wasn't a renovation. They redesigned. They built 7 new holes. And the city's idea is that there's a void in golf in the desert without the LPGA. It was
That's 100% right.
It was here for 51 years.
Yeah.
And that they feel like the LPGA should come back and should go to the Indian Wells Golf Resort. And they've made that abundantly clear. It's one of the reasons they host the Epson Tour Championship, right? Which is a developmental tour for the LPGA.
Well, the bonus there too is it's a daily fee course.
Yeah.
And
You know, they've got 2 of them.
The Amex,
Yeah.
it done the same thing by featuring
Yeah.
daily fee courses.
So I think they feel like, you know, it might not be next year or the year after, but the LPGA does want to come back. Their commissioner, Craig Kessler, is kind of the belief, we'll go any place anybody wants us. But you got to have 5 things to have a tournament.
Let me get
And
my
they
pen. Hold on. Let me get my pen.
Get right to say. You got to have a course that wants to do it. Okay. You have the greatest golf course in the world. You can have Pine Valley. Pine Valley doesn't want a PGA Tour event. So
Because the members have to give it up for a couple of weeks. They don't like that.
Yeah.
Especially in season.
you got to have a mover and a shaker. Somebody who's going to make this happen. Well, in this case, that's the city of Indian Wells. You got to have a date on the calendar. You could say, yeah, we'd like to play the 2nd week of April. Great. That's the Masters. You're out. You know, you got to have television because you got to have television.
Yeah.
And then you've got to have a title sponsor. And I think the city of Indian Wells believes they have 4 of the 5. They don't have a title sponsor.
And
It
it's
seems
great.
like that's being kind of a difficult thing to get the sponsorship. Starting to see even changes on.
Well, is that where the
regular
purse comes from, Larry? The title sponsorship?
The title, yeah, the sponsor is really responsible for the purse and for a lot of the production costs of a tournament. Basically, when you hear purse, double it, and that's how much money it costs. So, you know, one of the problems in the Coachella Valley is we don't really have a corporate base in the Coachella Valley. In other words, if you're the tournament in Memphis, you have FedEx. I mean, you have St. Jude and FedEx right there.
And that's why this tournament left to Chevron, because that's where they're.
Because that they could do it. And the LPGA wasn't in a position to say, no, we have to have this late.
Yeah.
You can't say, oh, well, I'm going to give you $5 million purse. We're going to put you on NBC instead of Golf Channel. We're going to move you away from the Masters a little deeper into the season, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. Oh, by the way, you got to move to Houston. Well, the LPGA couldn't say no. So they left here. Obviously, sponsorship had been a little bit of a problem here.
It was a sad day on the first tee. I can tell you that. The last one.
And I think that we would love to have the LPGA back in the desert, just as we would love to have the seniors come back at some point.
Yeah.
But, you know, for now we have the American Express, and I think that's relatively solid for 2027.
because Tigers said not share with us insured.
Future competitions,
Yeah.
Joy, yes.
I know they're trying to talk about reducing the amount.
Yeah.
You think Amex is safe?
I think for now it is. I think Brian Roloff, who's the CEO of the PGA Tour now, said at his tour, the State of the Tour address at the Players Championship. That it's really a misnomer that they're getting rid of tournaments, which is hilarious because I can name you 5 tournaments that are gone. But what they want to do is have a top tour, premier tour of 20 to 26 events. The other events that are on the tour now would go down to a second track. And it would be a little bit like British soccer, in that guys could get promoted up or guys could get relegated down. Yeah, only it'd be a separate like Tour A, Tour B, Corn Ferry. So a lot of the tournaments that we thought might be gone are actually going to end up on this second track. But I
wonder how that will work.
It'll be hard with sponsorship.
Yeah.
The sponsorship, commitment, guys like Rory, all of that other obligation stuff. I think there's some other problems with it in that, you talked about Rory. Let's say they have 26 events. Let's say 16 of them are signature events. Right. Rory is an independent contractor, and he's from Europe. He plays on the DT World Tour as well, from Northern Ireland. He's not required to play the big events here, whether $20 million purse is nice.
They have a minimum though, don't they? Have to play.
They have to play 15 to keep their voting rights and everything. But if he decides to take a week off, there's nothing the PGA Tour can do about it. I'm going to take a week off. So if you don't like a course, guess what? You're not going to go play. That happens all the time.
Well, the interesting thing about that controversy between PGA and these other golf leagues or whatever, Rory McIlroy, just to pick a name, he came across the ocean to play in the PGA Tour and not the European Tour.
Right.
And why was that?
More money, more exposure.
But he was the number one squawker about everybody else following the cash trail, which kind of annoyed me a bit. 3 of the 4 majors are played in the United States. You got to come here in that regard. I think that, for some guys, history means something. Tradition means something. And for some guys, a paycheck means something. Well, they point back, and I know you know this, they point back to Nicklaus and Palmer, who had the opportunity to start their own tour.
They were that close to starting their own tour. And Dean Beeman, who was commissioner of the PGA Tour, talked him down.
Yeah.
Said, now, wait a minute. We can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And Palmer looked at Nicklaus and said, he's given us everything we want. And they stayed.
Amazing. Larry Bohannon is our guest here on the Pro and the Hack with the one and only Dave Mulso and yours truly, the coach. Talking about Arnold Palmer. Larry and I were standing, let's see if you'll remember this with me, when they opened up Arnold's course in La Quinta.
Tradition?
No, the one by PGA West across the street.
Oh, Mission Mountain View.
No, the other one, the Daily Fee one. Why can't I remember anyway? It was 114, 120 degrees the day they had.
Silver Rock.
So there was a little put-up tent, and every politician in La Quinta was under that tent because the sun was burning
down.
And across the way were about 20 Mexican guys that were digging a ditch to finish up the 18th hole. And Palmer looked at the photographer and said, come with me.
Yep.
And he walked 300 yards and took an individual picture with every one of those guys and then a group shot and bought it. And I was standing next to this guy and he was walking back and we looked at each other like, that's the king.
That's him.
That's why he's the king.
Yeah.
They don't make him like that.
He was what he was. A lot of people, there's a phoniness about him in some way, or there's a rehearsed public version of him and a private version of him. Arnold was Arnold from the beginning. And he would come up and he would shake your hand and he would look you in the eye and say, hi, I'm Arnold Palmer. Never Arnie Palmer, by the way. He was Arnold. The only people who called him Arnold were people who didn't, Arnie, are people who didn't know him.
Yeah.
If you knew him, he was Arnold. I don't think I ever called him Arnold. I think I always called him Mr. Palmer. But a great story about Arnold when they were doing the original centerline work on Tradition, which is where he ended up living. It's the middle of summer, and he and his design partner Ep.6 were out there, and they invited me out to follow them around the
Come on,
walk in the center.
walking out with Arnold,
Right.
and the course that's not even finished.
Right. And it's like, we got to go here, we got to go here. There's a bit of a fight about how many consecutive par fours there were on the course with him and the developer. But so he's walking along and he's in his shirt, shorts, and about halfway through the round, it's so hot, the soles on his Nikes start to come apart.
The clues though.
Yes. And so they take some duct tape and they have Arnold's feet up on the truck and they're duct
They're wrapping
taping
his feet.
the shoe to his foot. And he managed to get through, and he looked at me at the end of the round and says, Phil Knight's going to get a call. And if you go to Tradition, they have on display that pair of shoes.
Is that right?
That pair of red tennis shoes with duct tape on them.
Wow.
From when he originally walked the center line of that golf course.
And so the first course out here was the old course was Dinah, and then the Palmer came over.
Palmer came along. I think the Palmer opened in maybe 76.
And was that part of the landmark guys?
No,
That
this was
before
before that. In fact, I think Colgate might have actually owned the golf course at that point. I know they owned it for a while.
Colgate.
David Foster was the guy who was the chairman of Colgate Palmolive, English guy.
That wasn't as much fun because you only left with toothpaste.
Yeah.
Wasn't as good as the Nabisco.
But he was an English guy, and he had flown in the war for the RAF, and he was looking around to try and promote toothpaste, frankly, and wanted to do something with women's sports. And he looked around, and there were some sports that existed, but they already had sponsorship. Like Virginia Slims, the old cigarette, the tennis. So he identified women's golf. And so he looked at the LPGA and went, oh, yeah, we can do something here. And so there were like, the year they started this was 1972, and the purse was $110,000. Now, to let you know what $110,000 meant to the women at the time, there were 30 events on the LPGA that year. 26 of them had purses of $30,000 and under.
The whole purse. Yeah.
The whole purse. Here's a guy who gives them $110,000 as a purse, and they loved him, of course. But he thought what would happen is, rising tide lifts all boats. More and more tournaments would start raising their purse. He told me once what he found out was a lot of people said, we're not going to get in an arms race with Colgate Palmolive, and dropped their sponsorships entirely.
Altogether.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But they started here, and of course, the great story was that he identified Dinah as somebody who would be the host of the tournament, and she agreed because she thought it was a tennis tournament. She did not play golf at the time, and she said, well, I better learn how to play golf then. And she came out, she learned how to play golf, and like most of us, got absolutely hooked on it.
Yeah.
But more importantly, she got hooked on the stories of the players on the LPGA. She became great friends of them and became great advocates for them. And that's why, they could have done it a year earlier when she was still alive. But in 94, at the dinner with Dinah, the commissioner was a guy named Charlie Meacham.
Mm-hmm.
And they announced that for the first time ever, they were putting a non-player in the LPGA Hall of Fame. And it was Dinah. And as Nancy Lopez told me at the time, she said, gosh, I wish we'd done this 1 year earlier.
Well, the LPGA Hall of Fame, for people that don't know, is the only Hall of Fame that you have to earn. I mean, it's a number system.
You did.
Yeah.
It's they've changed it now because it's within the World Golf Hall of Fame. But yeah, you at one point you had to win 30 tournaments.
You had to get so many points.
With
Major counted.
with 2 majors.
Yeah.
Or 35 wins with 1 major.
I remember when Laura Davies was chasing that.
Yeah.
Chasing that.
Or-
chasing it.
You could do 40 wins, but with 2 majors.
So I worked with Santa Paula out here.
Right.
And prior to her getting inducted, she was talking about shooting.
Yeah.
And I mean, she was so happy, breaking down.
Oh,
This course. Finally got it. This was only a couple of years ago.
Yeah, because they changed it to where, as part of the World Golf Hall of Fame, they changed some of the numbers. But at the time, she couldn't get into the Hall of Fame because of her numbers. She was a good player. She won a couple of majors, but she didn't win 30 times. The great miscarriage would have been Amy Alcott, who I think still has a place here.
Sure does. You see her. It's the strangest thing to be looking out and watching her just walking around, coming up the 18th walk. I'm like, does you people know who you are when you're walking up there?
She won this tournament 3 times. And in fact, her first year was 1983, was the first year of the major. She won in 88, and then she won it in 91. And of course, invented the leap into the lake in 88. But she finished, and she won 3 other majors. But she finished her career with 29 victories. So in theory, if they hadn't changed that,
Yeah.
a player with 6 majors and 29 wins would not have been in the Hall of Fame, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But, a lot of the LPGA players, Sandra was one of them, who lived here. Judy Rankin had a place here. And Amy Alcott had a place here.
Larry Steiner.
I think Kathy Whitworth back in the day had places here. The old group, because they all loved
Patty Sheehan.
Mission Hills. Patty has a place here now, I believe, still. So it's
It really meant a lot to them, didn't it?
it did, because it meant somebody was paying attention.
Yes.
That's all it really was.
So my first year as a starter of the Dinah Shore, the very first player that I'm going to call off is a Big Mama,
Joanne Carter,
Joanne Carter, who's a West Amateur champ,
the great Gundy.
the great gun. And so I'm a little nervous, I have to tell you, And so she's standing there and she's smoking long Chesterfield non-filter, like it was the last cigarette she was ever going to smoke. Just your first day? Yes, Joanne. It's Carner. Carner, and don't it up. I go, I got it, Joanne. You got it. And, she had a swagger, didn't she, Larry? I mean, I am the baddest player in this. She had this amazing swagger, and she had the old Arnold Palmer flip of that cigarette. She have it in her fingers while she was lining up. She'd take one more, and then flip it across, and then whack it down the middle.
She's a great story, because even before she turned pro, she had a fabulous amateur career.
Yeah.
Fabulous amateur career when she was Joanne Gunderson.
Right.
And then she became Joanne Carter and had a Hall of Fame career as well. So, the LPGA, when I first got here, was full of amazing players.
Yes.
Not that it's not full of amazing players now,
Right.
but it just seemed like every year this tournament was played, a Hall of Famer or future Hall of Famer won it. Whether it was the most underrated player I think I ever saw on the LPGA was Betsy King.
Yes.
Because she won here 3 times. She was in the Hall of Fame. Julie Inkster.
Walking up 18.
Amy.
Walking up 18 with Julie Inkster. And growing up. I've been harder with playing with them. And I say to her, like Larry, I'm like investigating, trying to get stories from my show. I said, Julie, is this the greatest walk in the LPGA coming up 18 at this course and this hole, this band's right here? And she said to me, well, Coach, this is a great walk. But walking up the U.S. Open 18 hole with a 5-strike is a pretty good walk.
Yeah. But, her and Sheehan and, back in the day, it was Nancy Lopez won it here.
Yeah.
And Joanne Carner won it here, and Mickey Wright, who is or isn't the greatest player ever on the LPGA tour, depending on which side of the coin you believe Annika Sorenstam is in. She won this tournament the third year it was played in 74. It was her last win. And she was playing in tennis shoes because her feet hurt, because she didn't like to fly, and blah, 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 blah. And she still won here.
And when she like have a Texas connection to Hogan, was that Mickey Wright or my mom?
No, that was Kathy.
That was Kathy.
Yeah. No, Joanne, Mickey was from San Diego. And that was another great thing was, you could trace this tournament from Mickey Wright to Annika Sorenstam and all the great players in between. And then unfortunately it disappears. And I was thinking about this the other day. That was replaced on the schedule, at least, by the senior event, which was played here for 3 years, the Gallery Classic. And there's nothing this spring. So that's the first time in 55 years that there hasn't been a professional tournament in the spring at Mission Hills Country Club.
Yeah, I know. And I looked back the other day too to this championship. Yeah, well now it's right. Where else do they play? Cool, Pebble Beach. That's the only two events they have in California. And the Pebble Beach event is they team up with the junior golf.
Yeah, it's a first tee program thing. But and they used to have tournaments in San Diego. I think there might still be a tournament in LA. I think the JM Eagle might still be there, but they've moved like 5 different courses in 5 years. They did just have a tournament in Tucson this last week, Color Guard, but we don't have one here. And for years, I never understood this. For years, people asked me. There were only 2 questions people asked me: whatever happened to Anthony Kim? Because he played high school golf here at La Quinta. And why don't we have a senior event? And now we got a senior event, and
Anthony's back after all this time. We high school golfers. You got another Anthony Kim? Have you seen any hot players?
Yeah, his kid who's actually skipping his senior year at Palm Desert High School, named Luke Ringcamp.
Great name, man. That's a PGA Tour name.
He and his family live up in Palm Desert at Ironwood, and he has already accepted the Division I scholarship to go to Pepperdine. Oh, wow!
1 year up
and play for Mike Beard up there, the coach, who also played at Palm Desert High School. Back a couple years ago, I was watching Luke at the U.S. Open local qualifier, and Michael Beard was there with Jason Allred, who also played at Palm Desert High School and won the U.S. Junior Am 1 year.
And I assume that was that the qualifier was
Bermuda Dunes, actually. And I said to Michael, I said, that kid, that Luke Ringcamp, by the time it's all said and done, you might be the best player. And Michael said, shut up now. Is it because this was Jason Allred? He won the U.S. Junior Am.
Yeah.
And actually got out on the PGA Tour for a short period of time. And is now the assistant coach at Pepperdine. But the truth of the matter is, Luke could be one of, 2 or 3 of the best who ever played high school golf here. Anthony's the best, without question. I have this great story about Anthony. In the space of 9 days, when he was a sophomore, he was 15. He played in the CIF team qualifier up at Tahquitz Creek up in Beaumont. And shot 66. Then, 4 days later, he played in the U.S. Open local qualifier at the South Course of Ironwood.
Yeah, it's generally the qualifier.
And he shot 66. And then, 4 days later, he played in the CIF Southern Section Individual Championship at Canyon Country Club, which is now part of Indian Canyon's Golf Resort. And he shot 66 and won.
Pretty good number there.
So, in the space of 9 days, he shot 366s, and he's 15 years old, and he doesn't know what he's doing. You're talking about swagger.
Yeah.
Oh, Anthony had it in spades. He wasn't going around calling himself AK, and he didn't have the big belt buckle yet.
Yeah.
But he knew what he was, and that was the last high school golf event he ever played. Because he had a lot of people in his ear.
And yet he had, he had some issues,
Well,
like a lot of kids that age have, like I had.
his parents bought a place in PGA West before his freshman year at La Quinta, and they moved him out here, and they went back into LA because they had jobs there. A 14-year-old kid living at PGA West by himself. Guess what? You're going to have issues.
Have some issues.
And
And it wasn't that Michelle Lee's story to it? Oh, no, they lived in big one.
They lived a big one.
Yeah, that's right.
But,
On her, I think.
but Anthony knew how to play golf.
Yeah, it
from
was
the
nice
beginning.
to see him back. It was nice to see him back and playing well. Wonderful, He was a good guy, with issues. Who doesn't? Yeah. Larry Bohannon was with us. As you could tell, he is the desert historian on golf, a desert icon in his own right, along with David Mosso, and the great teaching pro here at Mission Hills. I'm your humble host coach here at Mission Hills, and I just have a lot of memories with Larry Bohannon. One of the great ones was the day on a Monday, for some reason, we got called to play with Annika on the Feet Dot.
Yes,
And
right after the tournament.
right after the turn. And that was a little bit stressful.
Knocker there.
I would say. I was a little stressful, but
Yeah.
she gave us the lesson that I've never forgot. The 2 circles. I don't know if you remember. She said
Yes.
she drew a circle away from the ball. And then she said, when I stand in this circle, this is my thinking circle. I'm thinking about the wind. I'm thinking about the distance, the iron I want to hit the club. I'm thinking about everything I can think of. Then I step into this circle. This is my swinging circle. I don't do any thinking in this circle.
Just swing. Folks, listen to that. That's good advice.
Well, how can you beat the advice from her with all
Right.
that? And we just celebrated. They just announced it was the anniversary of the 59.
Yeah, Moon
Phoenix.
Valley over in Phoenix.
And so they left there and came right to here.
Yeah.
Now, Annika, as Larry would know, is the most buttoned up
She was
human being.
very, very shy human being.
Shy, but she was a control freak. She wanted to, in those days, they had these long cards that the LPGA would write that the starter was supposed to read. And every day, Thursday through Sunday, she wanted to see the card. Let me see the card. And she would look at the card, both sides, say, okay. So when she shot 59 and she came up, I said, 59's not on the card. What can I mention? Should I mention? She goes, that'd be nice, coach.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
please do.
And so I said, now on the tee, Miss 59, Annika Sorenstam. And the crowd went crazy. I mean, they went crazy. And in those days, there were 5,000 people.
Sure.
Yeah. And she addressed the ball and she had to stand back and she tipped her hat. And finally, I got to get into it and I got to give them the easy nap. And so she sniped it down by the tree on the left side of the fairway. And when she came back the next day, I said, don't worry. She goes, no, don't mention it.
Don't mention
it. Don't worry. Not going to mention it.
This is what I'll say about Annika. As I get ready to retire. People will say, what's the best golf course you played? What's this? What's that? What, blah, blah,
Who's
blah.
the best you've ever seen?
Who's the best player you ever saw? Now, you're stupid if you don't say Tiger Woods.
Right.
Because he's Tiger Woods.
Unfortunately, we didn't see him much.
But, we saw him here in the battles at Bighorn.
Yes.
And a few skins games. And I saw him win at Mission Hills Country Club, back-to-back AGGA tournaments. And he won a CIF championship in this valley, high school tournament. But we never saw him in an official PGA Tour event. He never played the American Express or the Bob Hope. So based on that, the best player I ever saw in this valley was Annika Sorenstam. She won this tournament, the Dinah, 3 times. One of 3 players to do that. She's finished second 3 times. And then they started a second tournament in this valley for 4 years. The Samsung World Championship. It was up at Bighorn. And she won that twice. And finished second once to Lorena Ochoa. So in the span of 5 years, She won 5 times and was second 4 times. You win.
Yeah.
You know, and she was just a machine.
And the swing is not a swing you would teach a golf pro. Teach him. I mean, you
pay attention if you get away.
you want your
That little,
students to see the contact.
right? And she
She was long gone
Oh.
before that club hit the ball. Man.
Oh yeah.
Her and Duval had those two goopy swings, but boy, they worked the both of them.
I read that out. You look at the ball. He wasn't he had 58 or something like that.
no, 59.
50.
Yeah,
At the Palmer
PGA
course.
West. I was there, walked with them the whole day that day.
I think,
5-iron into the par 5, 18.
but I can look at any number of players through the years, and one of them happens to be the number 1 player in the world right now, who don't swing the traditional golf swing.
Well, the funniest thing I think I've seen in a long time is they brought Scotty Scheffler to a public driving range, and all the guys stopped, and they also, kind of gathered behind him as he hit shots. Then they all went and they tried to hit it, and they all fell down. Every single one of them fell on their butt. But because the footwork there is highly unusual.
I can think back on, the very first year I covered the Hope was 87, and Corey Pavin won it. Corey Pavin had no business winning on the stadium course because he didn't hit it out of his shadow.
Right.
It's straight, but it wasn't great swinging, And, the guy I thought had the worst swing that I ever saw who won here was Kenny Perry. He had that weird little hesitation up on top and then come down. But the key was he did it on every.
It was repeated. How important is that, Dave?
You gotta have a solid breeze, especially at that level. You better have a consistent breeze shot. If you get your head like you just talked about, banana to 2 different circles. You gotta stay in.
If you're standing over the ball with your club in your hand and you're thinking about the round, you're in a bad spot.
Yeah. And
You're not gonna make it that bad.
The thing with Scheffler, he does have a miss to the left. He misses off the tee to the left.
He can have a tendency to get a little upright with it, and he gets a little quick.
But what he doesn't do is miss it right. So he doesn't have the dreaded 2-way.
He's got the one-way miss. Yeah.
But there've been, Nancy Lopez didn't have a classic golf swing. She was another one of those, had a hesitation.
It was tough iron bottom on that.
Domingo. Yeah.
Those that we watch them, especially watch our hands, how good they know it's set.
Could there be a nicer person than Nancy Lopez in all the years you've covered this stuff?
She was, Dinah Shore.
Other than Dinah.
Dinah Shore is the only woman who ever sent me flowers.
Only woman from Mission Hills that ever said you.
No, the only woman who ever sent me flowers. But she was from Frances Rose Shore. I have a very weak spot in my mind
Is
for
that
in
right?
my heart.
Larry,
for her.
confess it. Yeah.
She was, because she was just so nice, and she really was. And when she died in '94, we didn't know she was sick. Really, she had kept it very, very quiet. And
When did the statue go up?
statue went up a couple years later.
And that and George Montgomery.
Her former husband, George Montgomery, who was an actor and an artist, had done it. And, but unfortunately, that's the thing. We're just talking 32 years later.
Yes.
It's been 32 years. And, they took Dinah's name off that tournament in '99.
But as I told people who met that on my talk show, the tournament is being played on the Dinah Shore course.
Yep.
It's on Dinah Shore Drive.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it comes down to this. Let's say it's 2020. So it's 26 years after Dinah's died.
Right.
Okay. And it's a tour full of players who report after Dinah died. From a tour full of players from around the world.
Yes, sir.
who never saw Dinah's talk show, didn't know that she had a
Didn't know,
talk show.
they didn't know about, you
She
can
was
see the world, the
figure.
Chevrolet.
She dated Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
She didn't. They don't know any of that stuff. Okay, so she kind of irrelevant in that regard. Now you go up and talk to the youngster. You go up and talk to Amy Alcott. They just, but it's hard to mark it off of somebody who's not visiting. Bob Hope found that same problem.
Yeah, you know, if they're gonna take Bob Hope's name off the tournament, I mean, when we were growing up, you had Andy Wood, I should say, Jackie Gleason I believe it's if I'm not mistaken. You had the Hope, the Crosby.
The Hope and the Crosby were the crown jewels.
Yeah,
Glenn Campbell had the LA Open. Dean Martin had.
Sammy Davis in Hartford, I think.
So you know that, but that was before the corporate sponsorship showed up.
Yeah.
And in fact, Andy Williams told me that once. He said, you know, Andy lived in La Quinta Country Club for a long, long time. And I talked to him about that. And he said, you know, I couldn't offer him money. Shearson Lehman could offer him money.
So Larry, 40 years in and getting ready to hang him up, which is, you know, I'm on the one hand, I'm devastated by that because I love reading your work. And on the other hand, I'm jealous because I can't do it, and I'm your age.
I'm not sure I can either, but we're gonna find out.
So what's going through? You know, I mean, what will they do at the Desert Sun? I mean, they lost Bruce Fessier, their second best writer, and now you work with some great writers over the years. There, what was the woman's name that covered a lot of local sports?
Patty Meyer.
Patty Meyer. Yeah, she was that.
You know, I got to be honest with you. A lot of things have come my way in the last 6 months or so. City of Indio made me their Citizen of the Year.
Citizen of the Year. I'm glad you brought that up.
2025.
Brought that in. The City of Indio.
The American Express named the
they
press
named
room after me.
The press room after you. You're in the Media Hall of Fame.
Now I'm in the Coachella Valley Journalism Foundation Hall of Fame.
And you got in with Rick and Rosine?
Rick and Rosine.
My dear
were in
the bosses for many years.
But, and you almost feel like you're betraying people because so many people have come up to me and said, oh, by the way, we need to buy copies of that book. Cause I don't have one yet or whatever. And, you know, we really enjoy your stuff. You know, every once in a while, somebody come up and say, you're the only reason I read the Desert Sun. And I said, well, you know, there's so many great reasons.
Well, they have
to
the
do
New
that.
York Times crossword puzzle,
Yes.
which is the real bonus.
But, you know, the fact of the matter is there comes a time and, you know, I'm 67 years old now. I've been doing newspapers for 45 years.
You got your own teeth still. I can say.
So, I'd like to go play some golf rather than watch other people play.
Yeah, how about that?
I want to work on my game a little bit.
Well, I got a teacher
Do
here
that.
for you, brother.
I'm
a teacher right here.
Anytime.
I'm convinced that I still have around under 80 in me
I know, man.
somewhere. So I want to do some of that. I want to travel a little. Like I haven't been able to do. One of the things I would love to do next year, and they're going to take this away from us too, Coach.
What?
The spring is always a very busy time here.
Yeah.
Because of the tournaments and this and that. And I would love to go over to Arizona and watch some spring training games. And they're going to lock them out.
Right? Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be 100% sure.
But, you know, so, but it's been a wonderful ride. It's been can't thank, a lot of people thank, but the people you have to thank the most are the readers who put up with me for 40 years. And, you know, I get these emails. Through the years, I've got these emails saying, you know, I wasn't all that sure about you when you started here. But I've kind of grown. You've kind of grown on me. You know, for them to have embraced me through the years as they have.
Well, you were easily embraceable. Is there one sentence in the last 40 years that you've written that you said to yourself, "Man, I'm good. I am good"? Because I know Pessier does all the time.
I try not to do that. There are stories that I remember very much, but, you know, one of the stories I wrote that really got an amazing response. I've been diagnosed with prostate cancer, right? And I was going to keep it quiet. I was going to have surgery. I was going to be out for a little while. And I said, well, I'm a writer. And if I can write something and one person goes get tested, I can do it. And so I wrote this column. And the response was unbelievable. Now I'm going to get emotional. So, so many people called me, wrote emails, texted people I'd never met before, but who thought they knew me because they had read me for so long. Do this, do that, go to this hospital, see this doctor, best wishes, all this stuff. It's unbelievable. Because sometimes, and you probably get this on the radio, maybe not so much you because you've got people right there in front of you. But you know, sometimes you feel like you're whistling into the wind.
I often feel like I'm talking to myself.
Is anybody reading this stuff? You know, am I reaching anybody? And to have that kind of response come from that particular story, from people I didn't know.
Well, you know,
It was amazing.
what's amazing about that is that you know, it's prostate cancer is waiting for us all. I mean, it's the at a certain age, you're going to get it. I mean, it's just been so.
But it bothers me when I see people or hear people in the news who died of prostate cancer that had metastasized. This is one of those lines. In that column I wrote, but it's prostate cancer. It's the boy band of cancers because it's treatable and it's curable. And it is.
Yeah.
You just have to get tested.
Yeah.
And I'm here 6 years later. And everything is fabulous. So, you know, to have the readers respond to me over 40 years the way they have, some of them screaming at me. Some of them would say, "Where's that Bohannon guy?" And I'd say, "Hold on, my name's Bill. My name's Bill Plunkett."
Yeah,
you know?
I'm Bill Plunkett. Well, another thing too, though, is that that you were always the focal point of the traveling press when they came from the TV networks and all the sports magazine, golf channel guys. They always came to you. You were an amazing part of the Coachella Valley sports world, particularly in golf, but not just golf. How many high school athletes have you interviewed? How many times has a parent come up to you and said, "Thank you for interviewing my son 40 years ago in a volleyball game"? Then it's what I mean, you know. So you've been a big part of this valley for an awful long time.
I had a guy at the Coachella Valley Journalism Foundation Hall of Fame luncheon. Guy walked up to me, and he had a cutout of a story I had written about him 18 years ago. And he said, "We had to take this out of the frame.
Can you autograph this for him?
Can you autograph?"
Isn't that something?
And it was a guy who could qualified for the U.S. Senior Amateur. And what? You know, and certainly you sign it. And he didn't stay. He hadn't bought a ticket or anything. He just showed up and asked me if I'd autograph that. And you go, okay, this is why you do this.
That's why you do it. Just a couple more guys that since we have them here. And guys like I remember getting a call from Ernie Bosler and telling me to come back to see him. And he was man.
Yeah. When the king asks you to come down,
I said, "What can I do for you, Coach?" And Coach, what I have for you is a card. And this card will allow you to play my 2 landmark courses here at no charge, of course. Culture. I said, yeah, Mr. Boston. And then playing a round of golf with Johnny Pott and Tommy Jacobs. Rest his soul.
Yeah.
Uh,
Good friends.
Good
Great friends.
and Ryder Cup players. And I'm on the first tee, and I look behind me, and these 2, Ryder Cup players are staring at me. I said, fellas, I'm having a hard time getting oxygen on this tee right now. And Johnny Pott said, Coach, how do you he was a Mississippi boy.
Yeah.
He'd say, how do you think we felt when Hogan was looking over our shoulder? And he would say, we're going to get killed in the Ryder Cup.
Ernie Vossler and Joe Walder are the most important people in golf in this valley in my time here.
So. I would say so.
They developed the courses at Wichita Resort. They developed PGA West. They bought Mission Hills, added one course, a T-tie course. They developed Weston Mission Hills.
They mocked him when he built PGA West because they said, Ernie,
down in the middle of nowhere.
nobody's going down there. Nobody's going that far down.
But they also did something that nobody else had done. In the 60s and the 70s, this place had become about condo developments,
Right.
with small executive style golf courses, flat. And here comes T-tie in the stadium course. Here comes Arnold Palmer.
Right.
Here comes Jack Nicklaus. They changed the structure of desert golf completely. And unfortunately, they lost the courses because of the S&L scandal, which they had nothing to do with.
But they made so much money that they started their own bank.
Yeah.
And it was a bad time.
But here's my Johnny Potts story for you. Yeah. Johnny was part of Landmark and helped a lot with
I'm just a bulldozer driver, Coach. That's what he was telling.
Terra-Lago, which was at the time Waukesha Golf Club. Landmark Golf Club. And I was talking to him about, his career because he won a couple of times on tour. And he said, the first time I made it to the Ryder Cup, my captain was Arnold Palmer. And I told Arnold, the day before, he said, I'm really nervous about this. Playing for my country, got my flag on here, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to take it back on first tee at all. And Arnold said, don't worry. Tell you what I'll do. I'll pair you with me. And we'll be fine. And Johnny said, that was the worst thing he could have done because now I got to worry about the Ryder Cup and playing in front of Arnold.
Well, I think the most famous Arnold Ryder Cup story is when he took the European team on a airplane ride, and then rolled the plane a couple of times up there, and they all got out of late shape.
Right. That's the one thing that people don't remember about this. We keep this in time, but one of the reasons I wrote my second book, the history book, Desert Golf, the Palm Street Golf, was that the Ryder Cup has been held in the Coachella Valley twice, and nobody knows it. It was held here in 55, and it was at Thunderbird Country Club, and at 59 at El Dorado.
Really?
And people don't know this. So I said, and I would tell people this. They'd say, no. So I said, okay, I got to write it. But it was supposed to be held here in 91. And they were going to play it at PGA West. Everybody assumes that they were going to play it at the stadium court. Truth of the matter was, the Ryder Cup in 91 would have been played on a Nicklaus private course at PGA West.
Right.
And Landmark
was a pretty great track.
Yeah. Landmark had just developed a brand new golf course on the other side of the country called Kiowa Island. And they took the Ryder Cup to Kiowa Island. They stole it from us.
Where Dave Stockton, as a matter of fact, was the
Stockton was the captain of the War by the Shore.
I know. He was not happy with that title. He let me know that.
No, he told me once he felt very, very bad that was the reputation of that 91 Ryder Cup. Not that it was great play or this or that or the other. It had become the War by the Shore. And he kind of felt a little responsible for that.
Well, Larry, we can't thank you enough, brother.
Oh, real
It's an honor. I'm thrilled to be around still alive, watching you get all these accolades because it was touch and go there for me as well.
Which time?
One of the four, any one of the four. But we're grateful, and it's just a joy to know you, and I can't wait to play ball with you when you walk away.
I'm gonna go do that. Trust me, Larry. Thank you so much. Really, really
Pleasure.
appreciate it. Make sure everybody you check out Larry's books. We'll have them here at the end of the podcast. Subscribe to us. Give us a like.
Another legend here for the pro and the hack. That's 2 legends in 2 weeks right here, Meg.
Again, Larry, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
See you
Appreciate it.
next time. Peace out.
With host, the pro, and the hack. One's got charts set and a game plan. One's got coffee on their shirt. One's quoting data, one's guessing. Somehow it still kind of works.